Do we want the slides on the Zoom?
Yes, we do. Gloria knows how to do that, right?
Gloria, can you
Yes.
put the slides into the
Oh, Gloria, you worked hard tonight. Is that blank screen someone, or is we just waiting?
That's Kumar.
Hey Kumar, how you doing?
Hey, I'm here.
Are you still confirmed to fly out to Melbourne?
I don't know. Questionable.
Come back, eh?
I think just God's trying to tell me something. I think I'm resisting. I should just stay home.
Yeah, Lauren, you're saying?
My parents went home on Friday, so mask came off on Saturday, so they went back to Melbourne. So the entire time practically they were here, it was lockdown masks.
You know, one of the hot spots they've listed, Pete. It was where I'm staying, Banks Place.
Oh.
What was that spot, Kumar?
Banks Place. It's right near Collins Street.
So CBD.
All right, Rob is there. Hello, Rob.
Hello.
Hello, you got some funky little technical thing going on there?
No, I almost feel about to say the force may be with you.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. That's the main thing.
I've hotspotted, so hopefully that works better.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. All right, well, we are going to get into tonight's topic, and we are talking about voice gestures and engagement. Now, some of this we have been covering throughout our course because, of course, we have been watching our preachers and critiquing them and looking at their different techniques. But today we're going to help you to discover a little bit more about what your voice is and how you can use that, how to use gestures that actually are relatable and sort of fit within your personality and your style, and how you can engage with congregations. It is going to be very practical. I'm going to be giving you a scenario or two, and you're going to be working on that. So we're going to have a bit of fun there. But before we get into that, we're not clicking, are we? I'll just keep clicking with the hope that it will work. Three, two, one, go. This is like the kids with the traffic lights. I had it where about 3 times in a row. Thank you. That's awesome. Oh. Is there? Yes. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I was just saying, it's like with the kids, I get to the traffic lights and I go 3, 2, 1, green, and I got it like 2 or 3 times in a row. And for that card trick, Ben thought that I had magic powers, so he's since been disappointed. All right, so now that we turned this on and worked out the magic powers of this remote and the power of turning it on, let's have a chat through. So last week we spoke about authority and overcoming fear. Okay, we talked about a few practical things. What happens internally, physiologically, when you go to do a public presentation and you're feeling nervous? Okay, adrenaline can kick in, which can be a good thing. Can be a good thing, but you can also experience the negative sides, the shakes. What else? Body language. You can try and self-preserve, but what that does is it actually closes you off from your congregation.
comfort habits.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah. You can have your leg shakes. That was my. Yes. Like yep. Cool. Yeah, so all of those things can actually start to creep in unless we can manage our fear. Okay. The way to manage our fear is we don't pretend that we don't have it. We actually channel it from nervousness into excitement. And that's where adrenaline can become the friend. And looking at all of that. One rule is never go up there and tell everyone how nervous you are. Okay. Everything in your Christian life needs to be authentic, except that. And the reason is that it makes everyone else feel a bit uncomfortable for you. Okay. And so just go up there, take the big breath, and start with your opening line and go from there. Have a bit of prayer time beforehand, get into it, do your best. But a lot of people won't know that you're nervous. And you might be feeling it. You might be trembling. Your hands might be shaking. You might have sweat pouring off your forehead, but the people in the congregation beyond the first row won't know. Okay, so all of those things. And now that we've got that, and then we can start to refine some of those practical skills, which is what we're going to do tonight. Before we do, who knows who this is? Craig Groeschel, absolutely. Hey? Yes, no. Definitely Craig Groeschel. He is the senior pastor of Life Church in the US, which is, I believe, the biggest church in the US. I'm not sure if that stat is still current. 25 to 30 locations across a few different states there. Yes, creators of YouVersion Bible app. Very good. You know your stuff. And how many downloads of the YouVersion Bible app have taken place? I think it was something like 250 million or something like that. Most downloaded Bible app. So pretty incredible stuff. And that's all under his leadership, and he will credit his great team for that. But he's actually a very good communicator. He does a leadership podcast, about 20 minutes. Highly recommend that if you want to grow your leadership, because he covers great principles in a very easy way to actually embrace and put into place, and he will challenge you. But he's also a great preacher. So we're going to have a look at the screen and watch the first few minutes of a very recent message. So let's have a look.
Sometimes you say that's we don't say anything at all.
Well, some would say that we're living in the age of perpetual offense, where we're quick to judge, quick to criticize, quick to condemn, and quick to cancel anyone who offends us. Have you noticed that? It used to be just those who were more well-known, like we cancel the politicians or the athletes or the business leader, but unfortunately, now it might be someone like your school teacher that says something that you don't like. It could be the person that you work with, or it could be the friend on social media that just crosses some line, and so you just write them out of your life. It doesn't take much in the culture that we're in today. It could be a single misstatement. It could be a misunderstanding. It could be something very intentional, something very, very dumb. It could be a tweet that's 10 years old, but there might be a person that literally had years and years of integrity, but with one moment of foolishness or even one moment of sinfulness, we just completely write them out. The tragedy is, to me, is it's not just with those who are well known that is so easy to dismiss, but today it can be with your friends, it can often be with your family. There are family members who don't speak because they don't like the way another family member voted, or they don't like who they follow on social media, or there was a disagreement over a single issue, and so we completely distance ourselves from somebody. And it doesn't have to be just something that's big or would be majorly important. It could be that I just don't like the way she was looking at me, and he never comments on my posts, and they're really, really slow to respond to my texts, because one time I texted and you started to respond. I saw the bubbles, and you ghosted me. I'm so done with you. We live in the age of perpetual offense. We have to acknowledge the truth that if you're on a continuous search to be offended, you'll always find what you're looking for. And when we live in such a culture that's almost looking to be offended, looking to be angry, and looking to dishonor, the way we're called to live by God is very different than the current culture in which we live. In fact, Scripture tells us in Romans chapter 12, verse 10, this will introduce our virtue for today. Scripture tells us to honor. Somebody say honor. You might just type that in the chat. I'm going to show honor. Type that in the chat. Scripture says to honor one another above yourselves. To show honor to someone else, even above the way we would honor ourselves. So I would ask you, how are we doing at that, huh? How are we doing in our culture? How are we doing at honoring one another above ourselves? And that's why today I want to talk to you about one of the most important and most overlooked virtues that matters to God and should matter to us. I want to talk to you today about my title is Honor in a Cancel Culture. Would you pray with me today at all of our churches? Father, we ask that your living word would speak to hearts today, would transform us by your grace, that as followers of Jesus, we would honor you first.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of a snapshot there. It doesn't really look anything like Pedro Shell, but I tried.
Ah, you're getting better. Wow, that's really.
But would you recognize who it is? I wouldn't. That's okay. You've got a picture of someone here. So now that we're feeling enamored with the picture, let's start to talk about some of the practical things. Am I too close here? I think we can start. Talk about some of the ways that he lived it. Now, actually, let's start by going right through our course. Roles in preaching. Okay, who is he preaching to? More specific. Where is his church? Okay, so we've got US, his church. Okay, which part of the US? I haven't given you this information, so you're gonna have to. Anyone know? Sorry? Around Oklahoma area is where he's sort of centered. So that's in the Midwest, South Bible Belt. Okay, very much in the Bible Belt.
What the Bible Belt?
It must be a Yankee
What is the
congregation.
Bible Belt is, so in the US, you have.
Wait, what? Okay, hold on. Let me. What?
Okay, so very, very broadly speaking, if you look at the US, you go to the West Coast and the East Coast, and it tends to be very liberal. I mean, New York and LA, both very liberal, very postmodern, and a rejection of Christianity in many ways. But in southern US, southern and central US, so definitely Texas is sort of the centerpiece of that. You have a predominantly Christian demographic. A lot of people would identify as a Christian. A lot of people hold to Christian tradition, very religious, sometimes religious but not active in relationship with God, and legalistic. But yeah, have you got something there?
It's the map of America, and it's
Also
not,
a
it's not
Jello.
Jello.
Oh
Couple
my
of different
goodness.
areas.
Russ?
but
What? That's
All right.
Bible Belt. Okay, all right. Cool.
Okay, so he's speaking to a congregation that are Christian. They know their Bible and they have a value for the Word of God in that area. Okay, but he's also speaking into the culture, which goes across even the Bible Belt and across nationalities, across cultures, in this generation. Very millennial, very much given to offense, cancel culture. Okay, so he's speaking to a contemporary congregation. That is true. We're going to come to that. Harrison's Church, Bible Belt Contemporary. Was he preaching to, it must have been a packed room if he's got the biggest church in the US. Did you see anyone in the congregation? Did you hear anyone? COVID, online. And even if they have gone back, a lot of people haven't gone back. Okay, so that's his congregation. Let's go into what he was preaching on, so content. Now, we didn't get much of a chance to go into the detail of it, but we got enough, didn't we? What do you think his message was? Mm-hmm. So he was addressing cancel culture. Sorry, just be a sec. Addressing cancel culture and dealing with offense. Yeah. Kuma, Rob. Can't blame internet the whole time.
I think he was exactly what others say. He was addressing online and around the cancel culture. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm. So that was what he was preaching against. What was he preaching for? Honor. Very good. Okay, and that's actually a really, really good point. When it comes to us preaching and delivering a message, sometimes we need to address things, but we are never preaching against something in so much as we are preaching for something. We're preaching a value of the kingdom. We're preaching something that people can actually hold to and aspire to. Okay, so really, really good. And I think over time, if we listen to that whole message, we'll be able to break down that message a whole lot more, but we understand where it was coming from. Now let's talk about delivery. So what did he do to connect with his congregation from a delivery perspective? Okay. Yep.
He's speaking of moving again.
Okay, so he wasn't stuck behind a pulpit. He was able to move and all of that.
I think there was some hand gestures as well.
Okay, so hand gestures, which were appropriate, weren't they? They weren't over the top, but they were enough that could help us engage. Rory, you said eye contact was good. So
It's almost like even though they may not have been people in the room.
I think there was quite an intentional camera, and catching those different elements that would have been pre-planned. And
He
that's
was very purposeful in his approach.
Sorry, Rob, can you say that one more time?
He was very purposeful and like intended in his approach.
Why I agree. Why would you say that?
He paused when he had to. He engaged the audience. He gave good references to what was going on. So it wasn't a preaching to. It was an involving in what he was saying.
Absolutely. Able to bring people together. He was able to kind of unpack people's stories without us even having to tell him. He was able to go from critiquing a cancel culture to actually saying we are all participants within that. And one of the ways he did that was with his voice. Describe his voice for me. Was it controlled?
It's still booming.
So controlled, but booming. So it had authority. Yeah. Anything else regarding his voice?
The way he sort of,
He had like sound bites type thing, didn't he? Like you could take one of those little chunks and make it a point, or make it a little sermon, or make it a tweet. You know, you could, and that was how he sort of framed his message. Yeah. What was he wearing? Obviously, I loved his suit and tie, just very proper.
sweater,
Had his neck chain on, What did that communicate to you?
Young audience or a young demographic.
Okay, so partly he was reaching his demographic, yeah, and he was countercultural in some aspects of that as well. Okay, because he was actually dealing with people that would have been very traditional, but breaking that down, this isn't what church, this isn't what faith is like, this isn't what Christianity is like. So be intentional about that. If he was preaching at a traditional church in an Asian culture, he would probably dress up and wear a suit. It would be appropriate in that sort of setting, but that was not the setting. But think about specifically what he wore and what that communicated. If you were in that congregation, either in person or watching online as a part of his church. Comfortable. Straight away, there was a, okay, I can lean in, I can trust, I feel comfortable and relaxed to hear that message. It takes down a wall, okay? And friendly, absolutely. So what we wear actually does have an impact on the message that we're communicating out. And we need to be intentional about that. So really I've taken a little bit of extra time with this one because that really is where we're going today. We're going to talk about those different elements, voicing, gestures, and engagement, because it does actually help us to communicate our message better. So let's start with voicing. A few of the practical things when it comes to voicing. First one is if you are speaking regularly, it's actually really, really important to look after your voice. So Gloria, Josh, Lauren, and Rob are all singers in our church. Hey, Rob is son.
It's good to be recognised. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Do you warm up your voice before you start singing? Should you warm up your voice before you should warm up your voice? How long, no Josh for this one, Gloria and Lauren, how long do you take to warm up? What?
10 minutes to 20 minutes probably.
Okay, why do you warm up your voice? Very good. When you are speaking and you are preaching, and remember, we're talking about some range of different voicing techniques, using your voice quite a lot. It's actually really, really important that you do look after your voice. Now, you start to do this on a Sunday where you are not only preaching, but you're still singing in worship, even from your chair. You're engaged in many, many conversations from first thing in the morning until, if you've got 2-3 services on a Sunday, it's a lot of speaking, a lot of communicating, and it actually really is important that we look after our voice for the long term. But just as a singer will do that, so is with a preacher, and the same vocal exercises are actually really, really good for preachers. It will help you, and for those that haven't done them before, you can just get them on YouTube. Google voice warm-ups. Cheryl Porter. Cheryl Porter's vocal training. All right, we have a tip here. But when you are speaking, you need to be able to bring your voice from a lower register and actually to bring it up a little bit. And so you're not singing, but you still have the intonation, the ups and the downs. And if you don't have any intonation and you just speak at the same level the whole time, people start to switch off, especially if you have just come from the financial seminar beforehand. You need to be able to animate. You need to be able to put your voice into that, increase pitch and volume, all of those type of things. Okay, so you've done your vocal warm-ups, you're ready to start, you've overcome fear, you're on stage. What are some of the things that you can do to communicate a point that you're very authoritative about, you're very strong about? Very good. So I'm going to speak to the girls. So you don't have to have a man's voice. In fact, don't do a man's voice. That's not what we're talking about. But for Dora, for example, she has a very high voice. But if she wants to communicate a point that is going to, that needs to be seen as coming from a place of confidence and authority, she needs to do two things with her voice. One is she needs to slow it down. Two is she needs to bring it to a lower register. It's like parenting. If you bring the voice down and you speak with that authority and communicate a voice that represents that authority, it creates attention, grabs the attention of the hearer. And so it is with preaching, okay? Doesn't mean you have to speak in that low register the whole time, but you want to try and keep it a little bit lower for that reason, without changing your voice. That's not what I'm saying. What about if you are wanting to communicate sadness? Soften your voice, yeah. You want to pull it back a little bit. Again, you're going to speak a little bit slower. When you're communicating emotion, there is a way to be able to pull it back. And it is about slowing it down. It's about softening the edges of it, not having those harsh, abrupt endings that you need to have if you're drilling home a point. You need to get this. Jesus has a plan for your life, okay? But if you do that with a soft, if you want to bring sadness into it, and by sadness, that sense of reflection, that sort of emotion into it, you want to kind of round off those edges. You want to draw people into the story. Have the moments where you pause. Really let the emotion be felt. What about happy, joyful? How do you bring that into your tone? Playful. Very good. You want to hit those really high points, and you want to make sure that you got a smile on your face, because even that smile will come through your voice, and you kind of go a little bit higher. So it's the opposite to that authoritative voice, isn't it? Which is low, and if you're speaking with authority, God has a plan for your life, and you've got the smile. It's like it's just not working. You want serious at that point. But when you are speaking about joy and happiness and playfulness, you want to be able to animate that with your voice. Okay, so is that making some sense? So you're wanting to look at intonations, you're wanting to look at your pacing, you're wanting to look at where to add pauses. If you're trying to build, you're trying to elevate a point, you don't want to have pause in there. If you want to create a reflection moment, or you're wanting to have that mic drop moment without damaging the sound equipment, build, get to that point, really strong, really passionate, build in with your own voice, increase the speed, increase the momentum, increase the volume, and then stop. And let it sink in. Just wait for it to be a little bit more awkward, and then you go into your next part, okay? So you're using your voice to communicate what's in your heart. That's the reason why we do this at the end of the course. Actors will use their voice to communicate, but they don't really have the substance. They're pretending. Okay, not having a go at that craft in that field, but we're not actors. We're not performers. We're preaching a message that is incarnate, the word made flesh within us, the revelation coming from a deep place within us. We want to use that voice. Let's talk about gestures, okay? Do you find that gestures are helpful when you're speaking? What do you think, Josh? Do you think that it really helps to animate the point when you use some gestures just to help people to connect with what you're saying?
I'm really quite sure.
Sorry. Repeat all of that.
Sure. A gesture is important to communicate what you're saying.
On the topic and how you're.
Okay, depends on your subject matter. Just like your voice, you need to match it to what you're saying. Your gestures can become a distraction, or they can become something that helps. And a distraction is either too many gestures or not enough.
Ooh.
God loves you with all of his heart. He gave his one and only son because he believes in you, he cares for you. There's a disconnect, isn't there? You expect to see gestures. Why is he saying that, but his body is saying something different? They need to come together. Okay, so actually finding that, and the best way to do that is to actually get in front of the mirror and preach to yourself. Do you get distracted with your gestures, or does it help you to connect? You can look for a couple of things. I even start to look at some of the preachers and work out what are some of the gestures that they do that are helpful, and what do they do that's not helpful. One of the things that is probably not helpful is this.
Whoa.
And especially to use a different finger, even by mistake. Okay, and it has been done in our church with that middle finger, and definitely bad and not intended. But even the index finger pointing, what does it do?
Very
Judgment. And you can feel it, right? The wall, oh, what's he pointing at? What is he judging me? Okay, so you want to make sure that you avoid that. Whenever I point, as much as I'm conscious and aware of it, if I'm wanting to point to someone, I will usually use my whole hand. So what does that communicate compared to that?
It's more friendly, gentle, open,
It's an open palm.
invitation.
It's open-handed. It's a more gentle approach. It's more welcoming. It's not accusation. It is, I'm inviting you. Okay. And the more that you can use those open gestures, the better. When it comes to posture, this is not good. Why? Nervous. It's a look of defeat. Okay, so that bent over, punched in. I'm not confident what I'm saying. You don't really need to listen to what I'm saying, even though I have the most important message in the whole world. My body language is communicating, this is a weak message. You shouldn't listen to me. Don't be like me. So we actually need to be intentional about actually having that more of a powerful, not arrogant, but confident. Shoulders back, speaking openly, head reasonably high, and actually having that conversation. I know it's these little silly things, right? But they actually make a huge difference. They can be the make and break points for your message, because in your delivery, these are the things that people see. Okay. Facial expressions also really important. How many times do singers get told you need to smile? And I am guilty of being the person that says, gee, our worship team, they need to smile more. And then I went on to the worship team for about 1 week. And I'm like, okay, I don't know the words. I've got to make sure I try and sing this. And I'm like focused and concentrating. And I go straight into that, like concentrating, like I'm doing an accounting exam. I'm like, oh, smile, smile. I love this. All right, so high degree of humility, but it actually is really, really important that our facial expressions reflect, and it will change the way that your voice comes across as well. Okay, so dominant, you should have a smile because you want it to be welcoming and connect, but there are times that that's just not appropriate. So I thought you were going to add something in there, Lauren, but I didn't see that yawn. Never yawn in your own sermon. That's never a good sign. Oh no. Okay. Okay. So that's where you just go. You just turn it into a.
Yeah, we had some really.
All those things. Okay, so we talked about those things. Eye contact. Have I given you my eye contact trick? 3 points in the room. Above the head. So you look one in the corner, one in that corner, one in the middle. If you want to get real fancy, add another couple in between. And then you go between those different points. Okay. It gives the illusion of eye contact without the pressure of it. And as you get more comfortable, start to look people in the eyes when speaking. If you are speaking into something that is a real challenge, like, if you're saying something like, this person is easily offended and I'm staring at Josh, is going to feel like, especially if you use the pointing finger, and that's not at all picking on you for that. As you can tell, because I have my open hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Pete, question for you. I mean,
Yes.
on the other hand, talking about body language, for instance, for Bibra Lake, if you're standing on stage, it's quite high, and naturally you got that stage lights right at your face.
Yep.
How do you deal with that, especially for others who don't get up there?
that's an awesome point. So I have seen, we've got some paper. I have seen one of our MCs who I personally trained and took great pride in training. They got up on stage, saw everything, got her notes, and went like this so that she could see the congregation. Don't do that with the lights. If you can't see anyone because of the lights, it doesn't matter. The people need to see you. You don't need to see the people. Now, it does help, and have a chat afterwards and say, look, I do need to be able to see the congregation. You know, particularly if you're preaching, if it's coming up in the middle of worship for communion, perhaps not, but you do need to be able to for a preaching thing. Give that feedback after, but use it as a chance to just speak into those different points. You have an idea where people are in the congregation, and it's going to make it look like you're connecting without even having to look people in the eyes. So let it take away the nerves, not add to it. So you just have to kind of fake it, is my honest answer.
In moment, if you look at the people see this message important.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to be careful with those challenging points. Okay, I'm going to finish my content part in 2 minutes. So I really want to hit there, but it is great feedback, great questions. The only other thing I probably want to add in, sorry, Lauren, my notes. Go back. I don't think you were on this much when I was talking about the finances, so maybe we can go back to that.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not gonna get you.
Okay, so I want you to tell me what it feels like speaking to you from here compared to, I'm going to take my stuff out of the pocket. And I actually come and I sit down. Apart from Rob and Kuma, who can't see me because I'm too short there.
There we go. That's better.
That's better. And let me talk to you from the heart now. What is the difference between me standing behind and up compared to now? On your level, yep. What does it communicate to you?
Quite a relaxed setting.
Relaxed setting?
Voice went deeper.
The voice went deeper, yes.
Before.
So that which is good because that's what I'm trying to match. I'm trying to match my posture with my message, with my voicing.
Like, we're all, like, let's say you're talking about something somewhat correction, then you could sit down on the level and say, hey, look, this is something that we're all part of.
Yeah.
And so it's less of a you need to fix this, it's we.
So there's more trust, more openness, more receptivity. Now, you don't need to do that every time, but it's just these little tools. I've spoken to the people that wear glasses. You have a great tool in your preaching, in that when you come to a vulnerable moment, you take those glasses off and you speak blind to the congregation and watch your pacing. Don't fall off the stage. But psychologically, it communicates connection. All of those things, moving in front of the pulpit, all of those things communicate a message. What you wear communicates a message. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is to dress a little bit more than what the congregation is dressing as. However, there are exceptions, and especially as preachers, more and more people are wanting to hear from the heart more than from someone in authority. And so you can actually shift and look at what you wear that is appropriate. Okay? So, all good? Right. Now, in the final 9 minutes, I would like you to think about a story in the Bible. Let's take David and Goliath. Everyone know David and Goliath? Everyone love David and Goliath? Great. I want you to tell that story, and you're going to start the story speaking as a very happy story, and I want you to finish the story in a very sad way. Or vice versa. Start sad, finish happy. Should we start sad, finish happy? Let's make it a Disney story. Okay, so we're going to start sad, finish happy. Now, what I want you to do, I'm not as much interested in your content, I'm a little bit, but I'm more interested in your voicing, gestures, facial expression, and your presence that you bring. Okay. So what we're going to do is we'll work in teams of 2 and communicate that. So Josh, you're going to work with Lauren. Kumar and Rob, look, I understand it's going to be pretty difficult without having video, but you can do this by focusing on your voicing, okay? And do the gestures and all of that, but really work on your voicing, how you're going to communicate that, and Gloria and Maria as well. Okay, so first half, sad, second half, happy, or one of you can swap it around however you want to do it, okay? So you shouldn't need to put too much thought into the story. You're just going to tell the story. You ready to go? Any questions? However you want to do it. But I would stand up because you get more body movement that way. All right, let's go. Let's go. You can maybe move to a different part of the room.
We're doing this to each other.
Yep. Josh, did well. So, my point with all of that, and Rob and Kumar, I didn't hear you, of course, but I trust that that was a helpful exercise. The point is that our message, our voice, that's a good sermon right there. Our message, our voice, our gestures, and the way that we engage, the way that we put our whole sermon together, our story together, it all should be speaking the same language, okay? If we have a disconnect, people don't believe it. It's inauthentic, okay? So we just want to work on developing those skills to help us to be able to deliver a message that every aspect pulls it together. So does that help? Does that make sense? Any thoughts?
Yeah. She was good. She was good.
I thought I was gonna cry.
Like,
I am sad.
You're crying?
That is awesome. That is awesome. All right, well, it sounds like we've done very well at this group here. So next week, we'll be coming back. We're going to have a look at the power of vulnerability. We'll go into some special events, how to run weddings and funerals, and we'll go from there. So it should be an interesting one. It should be fun next week. Weddings and funerals, yeah. All right, well done, everyone. Have a wonderful night. All the best for your assignments. If you need any help with your assignments,